What a blessing it is for me to join you at the beginning of this very important liturgical season, as we have changed liturgical color, starting today in the Feast of Christ the King, and eventually for the following Sundays of Advent before our Christmas celebration of the Year of the Lord of 2016. Again, I'm so glad to see you, and if you are a visitor, I'm even more excited that you are here worshiping with us. Please feel welcome and feel included in our congregation as well as in our communion. I prepared some slides that will go with my sermon this morning, and yes, we have that. You might remember that movie even though you did not watch it, either in the theater or then on DVD. Well, The Passion of the Christ, as you know, it's a 2004 film directed and produced by Mel Gibson. He also was a co-writer. And we remember a memorable performance by G. Caviezel as Jesus Christ. It depicts the passion of Jesus largely according to the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It also drawn on pious accounts such as the Friday of Sorrows, along with other devotional writings such as the reputed Marian apparitions attributed to the Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich. The film primarily covers the final 12 hours of Jesus' life, beginning with the agony in the Garden of Gethsemane, the insomnia and the grievance of Mary, and ending with a brief depiction of his resurrection. Flashbacks, some of you may like it or not, when you go to movies. Oh, I don't like flashbacks, or sometimes you do. But in this case, flashback of Jesus as a child and as a young man, with Mary, his mother, giving the Sermon on the Mount, teaching the 12 apostles, and at the Last Supper are some of the most notable images depicted in this particular movie. For whatever reason, so far, at least that I know, no gospel movie or Jesus-related movie has been shot in the Holy Land. So this one was shot in Italy. And what it was really attractive to me for this movie is that the dialogue is entirely in reconstructed Aramaic, vernacular Hebrew, and Latin with subtitles. To me, that was common. I grew up in Mexico, going to the movies, particularly in English, and reading subtitles in Spanish. So to me, that was no problem. I don't know, for some of you, that would represent a challenge. You say, oh, we would wish that all the characters will speak in English and not forcing to read subtitles. That was interesting to me, because that was a representation, a reminder that the beauty and the tension of multiple languages has been there all the time. It's not new. But because we have had for centuries and millennia the benefit of having the scriptures in our own language, our tendency is to say, how easy for them to communicate because they were speaking the same language. Well, that's not the case. And that's really the reality. That was the tension of all languages. The film has been controversial and received mixed reviews, with some critics claiming that the extreme violence was distracting and excessive. I agree with that. That's something that I did not like from this particular movie. I don't say in any way that it was irrelevant to me, it's just that it was too much. Of course, the film was a major commercial hit, grossing $612 million during his theatrical release. The Passion of the Christ is the highest grossing religious film, the highest grossing rated R film in the United States because of the violence, and the highest grossing non-English language film of all time. As I already mentioned, I personally did not like the excessive flagellation and punishment of the character of Jesus, but I do appreciate that for the first time a director or producers took that risk in providing us with characters speaking in their own language, even though Greek was ignored. Koine Greek was spoken at the time of Jesus, but for whatever reason, Greek was not included there. Something that, because we have the benefit of having the Gospels in our own language, sometimes we do not realize that all of the Gospels and the entire books of the New Testament, even though most of the characters spoke Aramaic or Hebrew, all those letters and books and Gospels were written in Greek, because it was the lingua franca, the academic language of the time. But again, I do really appreciate the characters speaking in the vernacular, and in so doing, exposing this old-time tension between languages and cultures since the construction of the Tower of Babel. If we move to the following pic, probably it's not very clear for you, the resolution. Of course, this is a picture, but we can really see what the intention of Pontius Pilate in writing in 3 languages, even though in this particular picture it's just Hebrew and Latin in the bottom, Hebrew and Greek in the middle. That was what Pilate ordered, to write Jesus, King of the Jews, in 3 languages. Going to the text in Luke, in Hebrew, the verse 37, the translation is, if you are the king of the Judeans, Basileos ton Iudaion, are you the king of the Judeans? In verse 38, it is expressly mentioned that the words are in Greek and Latin and Hebrew, at least in the original Greek. And it said grammasin, from grammar, words, in Hellenikos, in Greek, Romaikos, in Latin, and Hebraikos, in Hebrew. There was the title, the inscription ordered by Pilate. And on verse 42nd, it called my attention. Did this criminal or this thief really call him or identify Jesus as a king? I have that doubt, so I went to the original in Greek. In the original in Greek says, remember me when you come into the kingdom of you. So, even though in the original Greek, the criminal is not identifying Jesus or calling Jesus a king, but it's implying that he is the king because he's mentioned, remember me when you come in the kingdom of you. If we move to the next slide, this is more what we are familiar with crucifixes, with that inscription in Greek, that is the Latin inscription. Then, after Greek was the lingua franca of the religion, in particular from the first centuries of the history of our church, then Latin became the lingua franca of the world and the lingua franca of religion, particularly Christianity. In New Testament, Jesus is referred to as the King of Judeans, both at the beginning of his life and at the end. In the Koine Greek of the New Testament, for example, in John chapter 19, it is written, Basileos ton Judaeum, Jesus, King of the Judeans. Both uses of the title to dramatic results in the New Testament accounts and the accounts of the Nativity in Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew. The wise men, the Magi, or the three kings, who come from the east, call Jesus the King of the Judeans, causing King Herod to order the massacre of the innocents. Toward the end of the accounts of the four canonical Gospels, in the narrative of the Passion of Jesus, the use of the King of the Judeans title leads to charges against Jesus that result in his crucifixion. Even though theologically and spiritually, what really bothered the priest was Jesus' acceptance that he was the Son of God, politically speaking, for Pilate and the political powers of the time, what condemned Jesus was his acceptance that he was the king. And even in his conversation with Pilate, are you the King of the Judeans? You say so. In no moment, Jesus said, yes, I am. So you say, I am the king. What Jesus accepted was, my kingdom is not of this world. Towards the initialism INRI, I-N-R-I, is in Latin. Iesus Nazarenus Rex Iudarium represents the Latin inscription, which in English reads, Jesus the Nazarene, King of the Jews. Again, referring to John 19, states that this was written in three languages, as you already saw the previous page. In the New Testament, the King of the Jews title is used only by the Gentiles. Or Jesus, King of the Judeans, is only used by the Gentiles, like the Magi, Pontius Pilate, and the Roman soldiers. In contrast, the Jewish leaders, the priests, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the people, the mob that asked for Jesus' crucifixion, they used the designation King of Israel, as in Matthew 27 or Mark 15. Both from Pilate's perspective, it is the term king, regardless of Jews or Israel, which is sensitive, but it implies possible rebellion against the Roman Empire. If we remember well the dialogue and that kind of tension in this moment of the Passion Week, the chief priest said, we have no other king than Caesar. If you accept another king, you are against Caesar. So suddenly Pilate was put on that political dilemma for his political position in Judea. In the Gospel of Mark, the distinction between King of the Jews and King of Israel is made consciously, setting apart the two uses of the term by the Jews and by the Gentiles. Is it King of Israel, or is it King of the Judeans? Let us move to the next. Well, this is another representation of the crucifixion. Even if we have wondered what does it mean, that inscription there, that accordingly, we were one church for more than 1,000 years, speaking Latin, so Latin prevailed, and finally the great masters of the Renaissance painted the crucifixes, and crucifixes were made only with the inscription, or the initials, or the acronym representing the Latin description or definition of king of the Judeans. Let us move to the following. This is a picture around the 15th century when Jesus is being crowned with thorns. On human terms and the political back and forth intrigue between Pilate, the Sanhedrin, the group of the priests, and King Herod about Jesus' kingship, he is condemned to death. No one gets the spiritual meaning of Jesus' words, "My kingdom is not of this world." Everybody felt threatened by the possibility of a new king, a king that will eventually displace the present powers and remove the privileges of those in authority and power at that time. Everyone is concerned about their political futures. Everyone is afraid of losing their influence. Jesus is humiliated with a thorny crown and dressed in purple robe, mocking him as a king. Jesus' kingship and kingdom has to be proclaimed by followers. Jesus does not need to say he is a king. And again, Jesus asked his disciples, as he is asking us now, "Who do you say that I am?" Who do we say that Jesus is? What do I say? What do you say? What is Jesus for you? What is Jesus for me? What is Jesus for us? Let us move to the following. If you wear a shirt like this, we'll say that that man at the bus stop, it guarantees me an entire seat all to myself. Because nobody wants to talk about Jesus, no much less in public. He might not be convinced about who Jesus is, or this particular gentleman might not, proclaim Jesus as king. But just that shirt, guarantees an entire seat all to myself. Nobody wants to sit like this particular person. It is possible. It is possible that we might refrain to proclaim Jesus as king openly or in public because our personal, professional, and political interests could be compromised. We know how much easier it is to openly express our preferences, our affiliations, and loyalty. We don't have any problem, even here, outside, in another kind of setting. We can openly, with no problem, talk about politics, sports, hobbies, community issues, even church matters, just to name a few. But when we reach Jesus, when we reach faith, when we reach theology, we refrain to do that. We say, well, that's a personal and private matter. So let us keep that to each one. We do not necessarily engage in those kinds of conversation like in any other subject, any other item. We can, with no problem, openly speak about that. And we say, well, this is a free nation. We have freedom of speech. But when we reach the theme of who Jesus is, so let's talk about Jesus, say, well, that's a private matter. Christ's kingship was addressed again in the encyclical Quas Primas of Pope Pius XI, published in 1925. Michael Greene called it possibly one of the most misunderstood and ignored encyclicals of all time. The pontiff's encyclical quotes with approval Cyril of Alexandria, noting that Jesus' kingship was given to him by the Father and was not obtained by violence. Christ, he says, has dominion over all creatures, a dominion not seized by violence nor usurped but is by essence and by nature. He also refers to Pope Leo XIII's 1989 Annum Sacrum, where Leo relates the kingship of Christ to devotion of his Sacred Heart. Pope Pius XI instituted the Feast of Christ the King in 1925, so this is a fairly new, not even 100-year-old yet liturgical celebration, to remind Christians that their allegiance was to their spiritual ruler in heaven as opposed to earthly supremacy. We have seen so many times, regardless of how you vote or if you vote of the outcome of the national election, I have seen so many expressions saying, whoever is in the White House, Jesus rules. And God is ruling, and God is in control. And whatever happens in the rest of the world, our Lord is in control. Pope Benedict XVI, Pope Emeritus, by the way, now, remarked that Christ's kingship is not based on human power, but on loving and serving others, like we do here. Like we are a community of faith committed and involved in community issues, serving others. Let us move to the next slides. Here we have a stained glass window of the Annunciation Melkite Catholic Cathedral in Massachusetts, depicting Christ the King in the regalia of a Byzantine emperor. In many ways, I have seen so many pieces of art from the Renaissance, from the Middle Ages, and even some Roman soldiers are depicted in the same armor as the Spanish soldiers of the time, because that was their pressure. No artist, no painter, no sculptor, no poet, no one had the chance to visit the Holy Land during that time. So the only reference they had was what they saw in their European nations. The Feast of Christ the King is celebrated by some Protestant churches like we on the Sunday before the first Sunday of Advent. Some traditional Catholics who use the pre-1970 versions of the General Roman Calendar, and the Anglican Catholic Church celebrated instead on the last Sunday of October, the Sunday before All Saints' Day, which is the day that was originally designed by Pius XI in 1925. The blessing in all this for us is Jesus' response to the criminal who asked Jesus, "Remember me when you come as king." And this is what, on a personal basis, I'm taking of all of this and share with you. This is a promise, and this is a blessing. If I proclaim Jesus as my king, that is the answer of Jesus to each one of us. I promise you that today you will be in paradise with me. Are we proclaiming Jesus as our king? Is Jesus on top of our loyalties? Jesus' kingship has to be proclaimed in all languages. And that's what I say to you this morning. Jesus is my king. Jesús es mi rey. Now in French, Jésus est mon roi. In German, Jesús is mein König. In Italian, Gesù è il mio re. In Greek, O Jesus enai basileas mo. In Polish, Jesus jest moim królem. And I asked, because she visited with me along the week, Reverend Azar, he said, "Azar, please, how do you say Jesus is my king in Persian?" And she wrote it to me, and it says, "Kolavan Masyah Padeshaman Haskan." Jesus is my king in Persian. And when we proclaim in our own language, and this joyful noise of all the languages known, you, we will be with Jesus in paradise. let us all proclaim Jesus as your King, as my King, and as our King. Amen.